from the detachment commander could have given would have gone a long way to relieving the tension of the situation as it appeared to me. Houston also suggested that, even though he had not been allowed to speak to the admiral, it was possibly because of the very vehemence of his pleas to the Naval Chief of Staff that Bristol subsequently decided to send a protest to Mustafa Kemal, as in fact he eventually did. Commander Houston concluded his unrepentant letter by arguing that if he had erred and violated policy, it was through zeal for the cause of humanity. Maybe, despite appearances, Admiral Bristol had in fact been moved by the first ship captain's urgent letter and by the second ship captain's passionate appeal to the Chief of Staff. Or maybe perhaps the Admiral had become leery lest there be some fallout for him personally resulting from the two ship captains' pleas, and particularly from Commander Houston's apparent willingness to fall on his sword for the Black Sea Greeks. Whatever the reason, as I have said, the Admiral again protested the deportations, but this time to the nationalist government at Angora, in other words, to Mustafa Kemal himself. A day or two later, the Overton's commander signaled from Samsun he believed the order for deportations had been rescinded. Despite this protest, for months afterwards, the Admiral kept receiving reports from his destroyer captains at Samsun, indicating another 600 were being deported at one point, 1,500 later, and so on and on. By the time of Smyrna, in September of 1922, over a year after the Admiral had protested to the nationalist leader, the destroyer captain then at Samsun reported that things had finally quieted down pretty much there, for there were very few Greeks left in Samsun. Even Admiral Bristol admitted in a private letter as early as January of 1922 that I don't think there is any doubt that the Greeks have been pretty well cleared out of the whole region and deported to the interior and villages wiped out. And he further deplored the massacres that were going on all over Turkey. Yet the Admiral would still insist that nothing be published in the press about this, and he had such much sycophantic help from the American reporters at Constantinople. The Near East relief workers also kept things dark in their case because they thought any adverse publicity would destroy the good work they were still able to do with the refugees at their mission sites. However, in May of 1922, when Dr. Mark Ward and F.D. Yowell came from Harput, they had been relief directors there, with dark stories of having witnessed many thousands of people driven to their death over months and months, the Near East relief officials in Constantinople decided there was no longer any purpose in keeping things quiet, and in a courageous action that would have made the Admiral absolutely apoplectic had he known of it, these four men privately advised Ward and Yowell to defy the American Admiral and take their story to the British press. And so they did. And so the story broke to some extent. Even then, the American reporters in Constantinople kept the story out of the American papers for the most part. Meantime, Bristol raised such a furor over the Ward and Yowell reports, he called it all propaganda, Yowell's yowl, as he called it, that one American journalist, Mark Clayton, decided to travel to Harput to check the facts personally. At the mission there, the relief officials would tell him nothing but snooping around. He found a diary describing all the groups that had gone through Harput and copied it on the sly overnight. This diary so closely matched the reports of Ward and Yowell about the tens of thousands that had gone through Harput and the many thousands that had died along the way that even Admiral Bristol eventually admitted the report's accuracy, implicitly admitting the terrible death marches that had been inflicted upon the Pontic Greeks. Although some officials suggested an investigation, no official Allied investigation ever was made into these deportations from the Pontus, probably because these events were overtaken by the enormous conflagration and tragedy of the burning of Smyrna and the equally enormous events that took place soon after that. I have no magic formula that would let me calculate exactly how many Pontic Greeks lost their lives in this year-long episode of what I've learned to call the Greek Genocide, the story of which I have here narrated from an American naval perspective. One thing I do know is this. After the year of death marches inland and south away from the Black Sea coast, and after the terrible burning of Smyrna, the Turks issued edicts that caused all remaining ethnic Christians frantically to flee their homes these people had lived in for millennia. Now tens of thousands of the remaining ethnic Greek and Armenians in Turkey began to travel back north towards Trebizond and Samsun and to ports everywhere in Turkey. More Navy ships were ordered in, and over the next many months, 20 American destroyers circulated everywhere in the water near Turkey and reported the regular arrival of thousands upon thousands of Greek and Armenian refugees seeking and eventually being transported out of Turkey, being allowed out of Turkey with these exceptions. First, according to at least one historian, tens of thousands of refugees died during this trek to the sea and beyond because of the awful circumstances of this terrible exodus that overnight had been forced upon them. And secondly, even though the Turks had indisputably won their war, for the most part, they would still not let any military-age males 15 to 50 leave the country, but instead simply shot them or put them in so-called labor battalions instead, where, as an American relief worker commented, slow starvation was yet another method for accomplishing their extermination. Because of this, the vast majority of these detained military-age males would not live to see the so-called exchange of populations invented by Fridtjof Nansen, a further great loss of life that even Nansen himself had predicted if the population exchange took too long to get started, as in fact it did. So much then, for just a little bit, the American naval witness to the terrible deportations from the Pontos, the clear responsibility of the nationalist Turks and their leader for these deportations, and the contrasting concern shown by a few great-hearted Americans for the great human tragedy and atrocity that they have witnessed. Thank you.